Imagine you're standing in front of two doors. One leads to your future, the other to your past. You've got 5 seconds to choose. Now stop and ask yourself, did you really make that decision? Most of us believe we're fully in control of our choices, actions, and beliefs. But what if that control is just an illusion? Back in 1983, neuroscientist Benjamin Libet ran an experiment that shook everything, from psychology to philosophy to the legal system. He asked people to move their finger whenever they felt like it and to note the exact moment they made the decision. Meanwhile, their brain activity was being recorded. Here's the twist. The brain started preparing for the movement before the person became aware of the decision, about 0.3 seconds earlier. And later studies found that this brain activity can happen up to 7 seconds before you think you've decided. 7 seconds. That's your brain making the call before you even know it's happening. It's like your brain writes the script, and your conscious self just reads it out loud afterward. So what does that mean? That you're not really in control? That your choices aren't really yours? Hold on, it gets even weirder. Do you remember brushing your teeth this morning? Not just that you did it, but exactly how you did it? Which hand held the brush? Which tooth came first? Chances are, not really. That's because your brain loves autopilot. Around 90 to 95% of what you do each day is driven by unconscious habits, routines, and mental shortcuts. It's not laziness, it's efficiency. If you had to think through every action, you'd never make it past breakfast. This autopilot mode is powered by ancient parts of your brain, like the basal ganglia. It lets you drive, walk, scroll, and even have conversations, all without full awareness. But here's the thing. It doesn't just run basic tasks. It influences your decisions too. The way you respond to stress, the kind of people you're drawn to, even the thoughts you believe, most of it is just your brain following old patterns. And the more you repeat them, the stronger they get. If something worked once, your brain files it under safe. So next time, it chooses the same path, often without asking you. You think you're making choices, but you're just running code. We're not robots, but we're not as free as we think. Think about this. What if your consciousness isn't the one calling the shots, just the one telling the story? Some scientists believe your conscious mind doesn't actually make decisions. It just explains them after your brain already made them. This is called post-rationalization. In one experiment, people were shown two photos and asked to pick the more attractive face. But after they chose, researchers secretly swapped the photo with the other one, without telling them. When asked why they picked that face, participants gave full, confident explanations for a choice they didn't actually make. It shows how our brain takes unconscious decisions and our mind scrambles to explain them, even if the explanation makes no sense. We're not lying to ourselves. We're just trying to stay consistent, even when we're not in control. Your consciousness is like a narrator catching up with a movie that's already halfway through. Which raises a tough question. If your brain acts before you're aware, if your choices run on habit, and if your mind just rationalizes after the fact, does free will even exist? If you're not fully in charge of your decisions, what does that mean for responsibility? Almost everything in society, laws, punishments, religion, ethics, is based on the idea that we choose freely, that we're responsible for what we do. But if our conscious mind isn't the real decision maker, can we still blame people for their actions? Neuroscientists like Sam Harris argue that free will is a complete illusion. Thoughts and urges just appear. We don't choose them, they choose us. But that doesn't mean nothing matters. It just means that blame isn't always helpful, and maybe not even fair. That's why countries like Norway focus more on rehabilitation than punishment. Because if behavior comes from environment, trauma, and brain patterns, maybe the solution is to change those inputs, not just punish the outputs. Instead of asking who deserves to suffer, we ask, how do we stop this from happening again? If people aren't free in the way we thought, maybe it's time to judge a little less and understand a little more. So if most of our decisions are automatic, unconscious, and pre-programmed, does that mean we're stuck? Not quite. Because there's one thing consciousness can still do. It can say no. Later versions of Liebert's experiment found something important. Even if the brain starts a decision early, the conscious mind can still veto it before it becomes action. That tiny window between thought and behavior, that's where your power lives. That's where you can pause, reflect, choose something different. This is where mindfulness, therapy, and self-awareness come into play. They help you spot the scripts your brain is running and give you a chance to rewrite them. No, you may not be able to control what thought pops into your head, but you can control what you do next. Maybe free will isn't about choosing everything. Maybe it's about noticing what you usually don't and stepping in. And maybe that's the only kind of freedom that really matters. You've spent your whole life believing you're in control. But what if your brain's been making the calls all along? It's a weird thought, even scary. But it's also kind of beautiful. Because if your actions come from patterns, you can spot those patterns and break them. Real freedom doesn't mean total control. It means knowing where you're not in control and choosing to wake up. So now it's your turn. Do you believe free will is real? Or is it just a trick your brain plays on you? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. And if this video opened your mind, give it a like, subscribe, and hit the bell, because there's way more coming.